Why so serious? I want to spend some time on IWPK today talking about having fun. I want you to start thinking differently about fun. Fun, when done mindfully and intentionally, should align with your interests, values, and well-being. I just find that planned fun works a lot better. You can be intentional about having fun. I'm going to be throwing out a really interesting challenge to all the listeners and viewers. Let's try and dive into how being intentional about the way we approach fun can enhance your joy, your personal growth, and even your relationships.
You're listening to Intentionality with Paul Kemp.
Is it okay sometimes to just have fun? Of course not. Have you not been listening to me for the last 43 episodes talk about living a more intentional life? How many of the interviews that I've done with guests have I ever spoken about having fun? Life is serious. Being successful is serious stuff, and it takes a level of commitment that does not leave room for frivolous pastimes, wasting time, and having fun. I never have any fun. Okay, let's be honest. Who fell for this? Who thought I was being serious right now? More importantly, in the words of the late Heath Ledger, why so serious? Yes, it's a movie quote. It's from probably my favorite Batman movie, The Dark Knight, which was released in 2008. Before we start with today's episode, just a quick announcement. I'm going to be throwing out a really interesting challenge to all the listeners and viewers of the podcast and the YouTube channel. Something that I think you will find very interesting. I also want to try something new today, something we've never done on IWPK. So please keep listening to find out more. I want you to start thinking differently about fun. Instead of thinking of fun as a spontaneous activity, as a mindless activity, let's try and dive into how being intentional about the way we approach fun can enhance your joy, your personal growth, and even your relationships. Fun, when done mindfully and intentionally, should align with your interests, values, and well-being. I want to spend some time on IWPK today talking about having fun, because life can be serious. And sometimes relaxing, doing something fun and exciting, not necessarily aligned with your primary goals on the road to success, is hugely important. Important to sustain the energy and the determination to keep going. If you ignore my advice today, I have no doubt that you risk a whole range of mental challenges, including burnout and possibly even breakdown. It takes a very special, very rare kind of person, kind of human being that can simply just work and focus and live intentionally at all times in everything they do. In fact, I have not met such a special human being, and I'm certainly not even close to that category. I need fun in my life. I want fun in my life. The more, the better. But, and this is a huge and very important but, you can be intentional in your fun. More about that later. First, I want to talk quickly about burnout. It is a buzzword. It is one of those words we hear more and more often in the workplace these days. It's a topic that's discussed in podcasts, in YouTube videos. There are even a few TED Talks about the topic of burnout, and it's the favorite topic of every wellness specialist out there. An episode about what you can do to prevent burnout could be a good idea for a future episode. Remember that, production team? But it's not the specific topic for today's episode. I want to rather focus on how being intentional about the fun in your life could play an important role in preventing burnout. First, A quick reference and acknowledgement to an interesting podcast episode, which I believe is very relevant, that I listened to in the last week. I've told you before in my tip of the week in previous episodes about the podcasts of Mark Manson. His podcast is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. I'm being particularly intentional about not using that word to see if we can keep the clean rating of this podcast. And in this spectacular episode from Mark, he talks about distractions. The episode is called How to Beat Distraction and Still Enjoy Your Life. It was released on the 9th of October 2024. And in this podcast episode, Mark interviews Nir Eyal. I hope I've got that right. Nir Eyal. And he discusses Nir's book, Indistractable. Well worth a listen to. 3 quick points on this topic of having fun that I want to highlight from their discussion on distraction. First, Nir makes the point that the opposite of distraction is not focus. You would think distraction, focus. No, the opposite of distraction is traction. He explains beautifully how distraction is simply an action that draws you away from what you said you were going to do. And traction is an action that pulls you towards what you said you are going to do. An action that moves you closer to your values and your goals, and that helps you to become the person you want to become. The difference between distraction and action comes down to one word: intent. Being intentional. See why I love this podcast? He says, time you plan to waste is not wasted time, as long as it is aligned with your goals and helps you get to where you want to be. See, being intentional about having fun. The second relevant point Nir makes is based on some interesting research from Oxford University on the causes of burnout. The fascinating part here is the recipe of burnout. It has nothing to do with the kind of job you have. The jobs that cause burnout, interestingly enough, are the ones where you have high expectations coupled with low control. If you have high expectations and high control, no problem. People that can deal with hard jobs, with discomfort and even pain in their life, can do that effectively as long as they feel they can do something about it. They have a choice. They have control. That is when, under difficult circumstances, people rise to the occasion. It is when high expectations are coupled with low control that anxiety and depression and burnout rears its ugly head. The third point Nir makes, and probably my favorite one, has less to do with fun and more to do with the one criticism of IWPK I hear most often. And maybe you have thought this before. The things I say on this podcast about living a more intentional life is way too obvious. That's what I've been told a couple of times. But my response is always the same. If it is so obvious, why are so few people actually living an intentional life? Nir tells us that the Greek philosopher Plato asked this very same question more than 2,500 years ago. He actually came up with a name for it. He called it akrasia. I think I've got that right. Akrasia. And what that means is the tendency to do things against our better interests. Why is it that despite knowing what to do, we do not freaking do it? So go and listen to this podcast episode to find some ideas on the answers to this question. And in fact, I will do my tip of the week right here in the middle of this episode. Go and listen to this podcast of Mark Manson and go and read the book Distraction by Nir Eyal. I know that will be the next book that I will be reading, simply from listening to Nir for an hour on that podcast, and because I desperately want to discover the full answer to this interesting riddle. Okay, back to the topic of fun. What does intentional fun look like? Beyond just relaxation or escape, for more than 40 episodes, I've been more or less serious 100% of the time, focused on being intentional in everything I do in life and helping you become more intentional. It has been a serious journey where I've been imploring you to think about intentionality more and always do the right thing. Life is hard, challenging, sometimes traumatic, sometimes even boring. This can get exhausting, and you risk being overwhelmed. You risk burnout and eventually breakdown. It can sometimes feel as if you never get a moment to just be, to just relax and take a break from your intentional journey. Up till now on this podcast, I've really tried to share with you things that I have experienced personally as far as possible. I have tried to help you with advice from lessons that I have learned. I need to acknowledge here that I have never experienced burnout, especially in my work. Not that I know of. I've always had high expectations of myself. People have had high expectations of me. But I've been lucky enough to always feel that I have a measure of control. But recently, interestingly enough, I have found myself coming close to feeling overwhelmed once or twice. It was just fleeting. And it happened especially with the combination of the responsibility around my new role at work and the responsibility of creating good quality content for this podcast. And I've noticed something interesting. You need to listen to your body when your body tells you to take things slower. I have this fantastic new watch. It's the new Garmin Fenix 8. I love it. And it has this interesting function called body battery. This is a function that helps you to monitor your personal energy sources. And this watch has shown me that if you do not find time for relaxation, time to have some fun, time to recharge your batteries, time for proper sleep, everything can start feeling a bit overwhelming and you start feeling less control over the outcomes in your life.
I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the FFG Group of Companies. Take another step into living a more intentional life by being more intentional with your finances and insurance. As a trusted provider of a wide range of financial services, the FFG Group offers innovative, tailored solutions that help companies and individuals thrive and flourish. They are an amazing company that I believe in because they embody intentionality in everything they do, and I'm proud to partner with them. FFG is an authorized financial services provider. Ready to take the next step? Click the link below and start making better, more intentional financial decisions, or visit their website. Remember, with FFG, you create the memories, we ensure the journey.
So, how do you have more intentional fun? Really simple. You plan for it. Yes, of course, there's something to be said for a spontaneity and spontaneous fun. And it can be amazing sometimes. And yes, sometimes fun things just happen to you out of the blue. But if you do not plan the relaxation time in your life, your time off, the balance you so desperately need to find in your life, the fun is usually neglected and often sacrificed. I just find that planned fun works a lot better. You don't believe me yet? Try booking a critically acclaimed theatre show or a popular artist's concert last minute and see if you can get tickets. Try and tell your wife on a Thursday night you want to go away for the weekend, tomorrow, and see how that goes. It does not matter what your fun looks like. Unfortunately, it almost always requires some level of planning. So make time for fun in your life. Do some planning around it. Intentional fun might surprise you and make a bigger positive difference in your life than you think it can. Now, please do not misunderstand me on this point. I am not advocating for even more structure, more organization, and more intention in your life at all times, even when you are relaxing. As I've explained before, I believe this level of intention can be exhausting. But there's nothing wrong with just a little bit more intentional thinking and intentional planning about the fun and relaxation in your life. Time to start getting to the end of this episode about intentional fun. I still have the interesting challenge that I spoke about and the something new that I spoke about at the beginning of this episode that we need to get to before the end. So, what do I do for fun, relaxation, and excitement in my life? If you are a regular listener, you probably have a good idea already. Here are a few examples of things I do for fun and relaxation. Spending time at home with my wife Chanel, enjoying a braai, maybe a glass of wine, just having a relaxing time at home over a weekend. Hanging out with friends, watching sport, reading fiction and non-fiction. Important distinction there. The non-fiction is while I'm working, it's for the weeknights. The fiction is more for the weekends, and especially when I am on holiday. Watching a good movie or TV series, or playing a round of golf with friends. These last two activities are especially excellent ways for me to just get away from everything, get my mind away from everything happening in my life. And then the final activity I enjoy doing for fun, playing games. Any kind of games. I love games. Board games, strategy games, word games, card games, almost any kind of game, but more specifically games where the balance between luck and skill is more weighted towards skill if you want to win the game. On the topic of fun and games, another interesting question, should you have fun every day? It's a difficult one. I think maybe a warning is more appropriate here than necessarily an answer. I think one has to be careful about trying to have fun every day. Balance is important here. It's always about balance. Maybe less days with fun than more days with fun is the answer. But I think it's something that's unique to every single person. I think everybody must decide for themselves where the ideal balance in terms of fun is. What works for me is a little bit of fun, short little bit of fun every single day. And that's where I make games and fun part of my morning routine. So every morning when I get up, there's a quick Sudoku I do, there's 2 Wordles I do, there's a quick quiz on a quiz app. These things only take a few minutes, but they're definitely number one fun for me. But secondly, and more importantly, it's also a form of brain training and learning. Now, you might remember from a previous episode I did around longevity, where I spoke about 10 things you need to do in order to ensure a longer life. And one of them was keeping your brain active, doing brain training, to have a better chance of avoiding conditions like dementia and Alzheimer's. My favorite example of a game that does this for me is general knowledge quizzes. Engaging in general knowledge quizzes is a perfect example of how to mix learning with leisure, a good balance between mental stimulation and enjoyment. So, very quickly, just my personal history, my personal journey with quizzes. About 20 years ago, I started going to quizzes at restaurants, at pubs, general knowledge quizzes with friends. I enjoyed it a lot. And then for the last 19 years, I never did it anymore. Life became busy, life became serious, and it's something that just wasn't part of my life anymore. And then recently, I rediscovered the pleasure of going to a general knowledge quiz. Interestingly enough, it is part of a ritual now where I go with my son, Keanu, who's part of our production team, to go have a beer and a burger in a restaurant and just do a general knowledge quiz. And that's where my challenge for today's episode comes in. The quiz we normally go to is a quiz that takes place every Wednesday night at 7 at a place called Railways Cafe in Irene, Pretoria. And my challenge to you is, if you are interested in general knowledge quizzes, why don't you come and join myself and my team on the 6th of November 2024 at 7 o'clock at Railways Cafe in Irene. I would love to meet some of the listeners and viewers of IWPK who shares some of my interests, especially my interest in general knowledge quizzes. Bring a team of players and come and join us and test yourself against me and my team. Are you starting to get a sense of what I mean when I say you can be intentional about having fun? You can be intentional about that part of your life. I'm intentional about challenging myself even when having fun. Now, here's a weird and crazy example of challenging myself, being more intentional while having fun. I love memorizing things, especially things that I'm interested in. This is a habit that started in school, where I found it's surprisingly easy to memorize things if you enjoy it, if you find it interesting. So there's an important element to this memorizing things. It has to be fun to you. Now, I've memorized many things in my life, things like capital cities of the world, flags of all the countries of the world. I've even memorized the 50 states of the United States, all of the James Bond movies ever made, including who was the director, who was the star, who was the love interest, who was the villain. I've even gone as far as memorizing the main Oscars Academy Awards that were handed out since 1927. That included Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Director. Now, on that point, I haven't done that in a while, so if you ever do test me on the Academy Awards, maybe you'll catch me out. Now, in my opinion, memorizing things is a nice party trick. And I've actually spoken before about the value of having an interesting party trick. I think it makes you more interesting to people. It makes you more memorable to people. Now, I'd like to encourage you to reach out to IWPK if you are also a little bit crazy like me and you've memorized something in your life, something that you're interested in. I would love to know about it. So send us an email at paul@iwpk.co.za or engage with us on social media. Maybe you can even challenge me on something you have memorized in your life and that you want me to try and memorize. I am actually looking for the next interesting thing in my life to memorize. I would love to hear from you. Okay, I have also promised you something brand new today, something different that we're going to try on IWPK. We're going to be recording this as a separate reel or short. I want to try a quick movie quiz on IWPK, which will be released under the IWPK channel. I'm going to do it in the format of 10 quick questions, a perfect combination of my love of movies and quizzes. Let's see how this goes, how popular it is among our listeners and viewers. So it's important that you engage, please. If it works and you do engage with us, we might just make this a regular occasion. That's it for this week's episode. The tip of the week has already been done, but let's end off with a great quote I read recently. Time is the only currency you spend without ever knowing your balance. So spend it wisely. Remember to schedule at least a little bit of fun in your life, instead of just leaving it to chance or as an afterthought. It might be exactly what you need to bring the creativity, the energy and passion and enthusiasm back into your life that will help you to move to the next level of intentionality in your work and personal life. Stay intentional, folks.
Thanks for watching Intentionality with Paul Kempf. Subscribe, like, and click that bell to get notified when we release more episodes on how to live a life of intention and purpose.